This episode of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast is sponsored by Caneswear. Caneswear.com is the spot where Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com, the best and most affordable gear for the Miami Dolphins, the Miami Marlins, the Miami Heat, the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, all of the professional and college sports teams in South Florida. Caneswear.com has you covered. If you're in South Florida, you can visit the storefront at 2655 South University Drive in Davie. They ship internationally as well. So Caneswear.com, make it the place. It's the best and most affordable Miami Dolphins gear. That's Caneswear.com, Caneswear.com. And don't forget about Dolphins Talk Extra. Go to patreon.com/Dolphins Talk for additional Miami Dolphins content. You get extra access to our private Discord server. You get bonus podcasts covering the Miami Dolphins. You get off-topic content as well. We have live watch-alongs. We have retro rewatches where we watch old games and talk about them. We do off-topic shows. We have prizes, contests, all kinds of exclusive access only for Dolphins Talk Extra subscribers. So join us, patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. You can join the fun for as little as $3 a month. Head on over to Dolphins Talk Extra at patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. And now, on with the show.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking to my ball. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello and welcome to an episode of Dolphins Talk. My name is Marissa Marino, and today I am joined by published author and esteemed NFL analyst, Warren Sharp. Warren, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be done with the book and talking to people like yourself about the upcoming season, which is going to be a very exciting and fun NFL season. And certainly as it relates to the Miami Dolphins, so many different things to discuss here. So really happy to dive into it with you here momentarily.
We cannot wait as well. And just so everyone knows, Warren has just released his latest book, Sharp Football Analysis 2025 Football Preview. You can purchase the book directly from his website at sharpfootballanalysis.com or on Amazon. And if you want to keep up with expert analysis throughout the season, make sure to follow Warren on Twitter at Sharp Football. Warren, 586 pages. Let's dig into it. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the book was, writing the book is a labor of love. It takes months to create. I've got like the printed copy of it right here, which is what you can get over at Amazon. As you can see, it's a lot of material here to get through. But writing it is a detailed process. I go back, I look at last season, I look at why those teams won or lost the games that they did. I firmly disagree with the John Maddenism, you are what your record says you are. I think there's so much more to teams' wins and losses, as we'll talk about momentarily with the Miami Dolphins and how your season last year unfolded. And so you really need to dive into it and take the time to go through the context of every injury that occurred, every player that underperformed or overperformed, to get a sense as to why a team finished the way that they did, and then what their expectations are for this year. And are those expectations appropriate? Or do I believe that they're going to live up to those expectations? What has changed from the team last year to this year, from a personnel perspective, through the draft, through free agency, through people leaving, through people being added, and then from a coaching staff perspective as well. So it is a ton of work, but it's a lot of fun. It helps me get ready for the season. And as you mentioned, you can get the book. If you go to sharp.football, you can find a link to get yourself a copy. It's $30 on my website. But we've got a special for your audience. If you use the code TALK, because you're Dolphins Talk, use the code TALK. It's just $1. So you can get all 586 pages. We'll talk about the Dolphins a lot here, and you're going to find some more things in the book that we're not going to get a chance to cover as it relates to the Dolphins. But especially if you're interested in the 31 other teams out there, the opponents that you guys are going to play this year, you're not going to find a better way to get prepared for the season than by reading this book. And I can assure you, you're not going to find a better bang for your buck than literally $1 for that book. So sharp.football is the URL. Head over there, use the code TALK, and you'll get it for just $1.
Well, we appreciate that. And I'm sure the listeners are going to hop on that. And if you're into fantasy football, I dug into it last night. I'm an avid reader and it was phenomenal. It gives such great insight. So we are hoping that all of our fans will go to do that and make sure you check his book out. So we're going to dive into this. Okay. So, first question I have for you. You mentioned in your book that the Dolphins offense doesn't scare opposing defenses like it did in the early years of Mike McDaniel. And that defense hasn't kind of solved the puzzle. Do you feel that it is more of a player personnel issue or more of a play calling issue? And to back up that question, if you do think it's play calling and Miami kind of gets off to a slow start this season, do you think Miami should give up play calling duties to someone like Darrell Bevel or Bobby Slowick, who have kind of an wealth of experience in that role?
I do think those guys have experience calling plays, but unfortunately, I don't have very much confidence in Bobby Slowick or Darrell Bevel actually calling plays. So I think Mike McDaniel, this is his team. It's very difficult for guys to come in and become head coaches, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Like they don't get may not get many opportunities to be a head coach in the NFL. And especially a guy like Mike McDaniel who calls plays offensively, you take that so seriously. And I don't know that you want to just relinquish play calling duties and let your team potentially lose games and fall off the rails and your job gets impacted because Bobby Slowick was calling plays for you or Darrell Bevel was calling plays for you. So you, in my opinion, Mike McDaniel goes down with the ship if that's what's going to happen. I think he should not relinquish play calling duties, but I do think they need to do a lot better job of starting out games quicker, of getting on track quicker. I think the offense needs to figure out better ways to be explosive. They need to figure out better ways to run the football because defenses have been keying in on some of the things that he brought that were so unique and different. And I would say caught opponents by off guard when he first started introducing those concepts. And he tweaked some things with some of the short motions with Tyreek Hill at times, years ago. But I think we need to see a lot more this offseason. We need to see some new things introduced to the Miami Dolphins offense. They have a big impediment that offense is working around, and that's the offensive line, right? We know that they've got skillful players. We will talk momentarily, I'm sure, about Tua himself and where he should be ranked in around the league and why people talk poorly about him and why some of that might not be deserved. But I think the weakness that we can all agree on is that offensive line. And so you're going to have to figure out a way to work around it. You can't just say, well, we may not be able to run the football quite as well, and some of our plays can't be explosive because we got to get the ball out quicker. And it just is what it is because our offensive line isn't great. No, you're the offensive play caller. You have to figure out ways to work with the hand that you've been dealt and still try to put up an offense that's going to produce enough points. And I'm big on starting games quickly, building leads early so that you force opponents to change their strategies in the second half to do something a little bit more frantically. And it can help your defense. It allows your offense to be able to call plays no matter what you want to do, run or pass, because you're not being dictated by being down late in the game. So it's so important to build those early leads. That's what they need to be focusing on. And Mike McDaniel is going to just have to work around that offensive line.
Yeah, and speaking of the offensive line, your book does a fabulous job of referencing that offensive line. And you actually break it down and you tell us by dollars invested, it's the sixth cheapest and the last 3 years. And then it ranks number 3 in the least draft capital invested over a 3-year time frame. And you also mentioned it has the second highest rate of holding penalties over this 3-year stretch. So it's not really shocking the position our group struggles with year over year. And it might be worse this year with us losing Teron Armstead to retirement. Do you think that Miami did enough this offseason to improve the offensive line? Because we know they re-signed Liam Eichenberg, who has been a part of the problem. They traded a bunch of picks for Jonah Savaianaya on night 2 of the draft, who's a rookie. They're going to have to start him day 1. And then they signed James Daniels coming off of a major injury. So do you think they should have done more for this offensive line?
I would have liked to see it. I mean, one of the things that I think that the front office has done is they've spent their money elsewhere, knowing that Tua has such a lightning quick release, and with Mike McDaniel's offense, it could just overcome so many things because of how unique it is. And that's why when you stick any other quarterback back behind that offensive line, they falter miserably. Like any of your backups are going to fail miserably because none of them can operate with the precision passing, getting the ball out super quick, but very accurate, still incorporating pre-snap motion and play action and all the things that Tua does. None of the backups can do it. And I would venture to say probably, 25 or so NFL starters in the league right now would not be able to just come onto the Miami Dolphins in week 1 and execute the offense like Tua is capable of executing it. You might not think that Tua is like the 7th or 8th best quarterback in the league. And, I think he was ranked in the 90s in terms of the NFL's top 100 that just came out. But he is one of the most valuable quarterbacks to this offense because of the way that he can operate this offense that most quarterbacks would not be able to do. That being said, if you continuously allow talent to leave, and obviously you don't have control over the fact that Armstead retired, but if you continuously allow talent to leave and you're continuously not bringing in the blue chip players that you need to build an offensive line, eventually you get to this point. You get to the point where your run game is not explosive. Your run game cannot be depended upon for some of these short yardage conversions. I mean, last year, the short yardage run game was abysmal. 46% of your runs were stuffed in short yardage situations. That was the worst rate for any team in the NFL since 2019. And yes, you did have some injuries along that offensive line, which derailed things, especially Austin Jackson over the second half of the season. But I just believe that you did not do enough to address this, and it still is going to be a weak link for your team. Naturally, you hope that it doesn't endure the number of injuries that you suffered last season. But that being said, one injury will have a domino effect on a line that's this thin with the talent that is not that great to begin with.
Yeah. And, even speaking more about that offense right now, I mean, we know Johnny Smith no longer with the team. He had 88 receptions for 884 yards, 8 touchdowns last season, stellar season. Miami now is in the spot of replacing that production. The only decent pass catching tight end they have on the roster is a guy who just came out of retirement, Darren Waller. And then they also added Nick Westbrook-Ikhine at wide receiver. Do you think those guys combined can come close to picking up production Miami lost with Jonnu? Or do you really think Miami is just going to really have to rely on Hill and Waddle stepping up and having a year like they had 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think they're going to rely upon Hill and Waddle. I want to get the ball into my most talented playmakers. Those targets that went to Jonnu, while he made some special things happen at times after the catch, because that was what was required, because the passes were being thrown to him so close to the line of scrimmage that most of the yardage that he was gaining was yards after the catch. The upside on those was still limited, and you've got to get bigger upside, and that's going to come through your best playmakers. I don't trust Darren Waller whatsoever. I don't think that Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, while he can be, 3-catch, 2-catch guy here and there, he's not the type of guy that your passing game could hang its hat on or even be used as like a dependable third receiver. I think it's going to be your running backs out of the backfield that are going to pick up most of that workload from Johnny Smith that was lost. And then you're going to have to use the rest of it to just load up on Tyreek Hill's plate. And, he is such a special receiver. He was dealing with some injuries. He was dealing with some other things off the field last season that were causing a lot of distractions. Hopefully he stays quite focused this season and stays healthy this season, because I think the team is really going to need him to perform. The key issue, though, is when you look at your schedule, it's manageable at the start. You've got one of the easier schedules in the first 5 weeks by my metrics of any team in the NFL. The most difficult game, obviously, is week 3. You play on the road in Buffalo, Thursday Night Football. So short week road game. Those are brutal. The only positive of that, if we want to spin it in a positive direction, is at least you're not going up to Buffalo in December or January, which you struggled immensely in those types of games. So at least you're knocking that out early on in the season. Otherwise, you're playing the Colts, the Patriots, the Jets, and the Panthers your first 5 weeks of the season. None of those teams are expected to produce more than 8.5 wins at most on the season. If you're looking at win totals, most of them are less than that. So there are winnable games for the Dolphins to get off on the right foot here and start a little bit better this season. But if they struggle early, then all the questions start coming into play with Tyreek, and is he giving the full amount of effort when his team is playing terribly and losing games? And then Mike McDaniel gets called into question. So you really got to start off quickly. The good news is your schedule is built to allow you to do that.
Yeah, we are definitely going to need full buy-in from Tyreek Hill this season. That's going to be a key part of this offense. So let's talk about the subject of all subjects, Tua, the guy that people love to hate and hate to love. We're going into year 6. The injuries have been the story of his career. Everyone knows he needs to stay healthy. So let's just put that aside. We know that that's the case. So there are so many great stats in your book on Tua. Last night, I was sitting on my couch. I was having a little bit of Diet Coke, and I was reading the book, and I was noticed some great stats. So you said Tua last year, number 3 in EPA, number 3 in success rate, number 2 in yards per average, number 2 in completion rate, number 2 in 15+ yard explosive play rate. I mean, a player with those numbers on his resume, you wouldn't think would get the criticism he gets from the fans and the media. Do you believe that his injuries have overshadowed everything with him? Or, numbers aside, is there just something that's missing with his game that the numbers don't show that gives smart, reasonable people reason to question if he's the guy that lead this team?
Well, there's all sorts of questions about Tua. It does stem, I think the main thought process with as it relates to Tua is, his first couple of years there weren't so great. Obviously, Brian Flores was involved and there was a lot of criticism. And so some of these quarterbacks, it's not different than any of us. First impressions mean a lot. And this is one of the reasons why Geno Smith is underrated a little bit, because he started off so terribly with the Jets in New York. And so even though he was playing well and very accurate when he was in Seattle, nobody's really caring about that. And nobody's really looking at him as a decent quarterback because they just remember Geno Smith being so terrible. And so I think some people enter the Tua discussion with a negative stigma around him because of his early start to his career. Then you look at when he got Mike McDaniel, everybody praised Mike McDaniel for everything. So it's like, oh, Tua wasn't really doing this. This was Mike McDaniel's offense. So that's a part of it. Then you factor in the injuries that he's unfortunately sustained and some of the time that he missed. And I remember whenever he had that massive injury that caused him to miss time, everybody was talking about, this wasn't last year. This was, I believe, the year before that potentially, or the year before that. Everybody's talking about, should he retire? He needs to retire. It's unsafe for him to keep playing. And when he finally came out and started speaking about it again, he's like, I want to keep playing. I want to play football. And people were like shocked in the media. Were like, why is he doing this? He shouldn't do this. Like, not trying to let him keep playing football. So there's that aspect of it as well. Not just the injuries, but like people are almost like rooting that he just stays safe and stays away from the game. So all of those factors are at play, but when you look at what he actually does on the field, which I try to separate out in the book, the Miami Dolphins are one of the best offenses in the NFL when Tua is playing quarterback. The Miami Dolphins are getting top 5 passing efficiency when Tua is playing quarterback. If you look at the numbers and you separate out, he started weeks 1, 2, and then 9 through 16 last year. He missed games at the beginning of the season, at the end of the season. In his starts, the Miami Dolphins, from a passing perspective, average plus 0.18 EPA per attempt, 51% success, 7.1 yards per attempt. They ranked number 3 and number 4 in 2 of those metrics in the entirety of the NFL when he was starting those games. You look at the statistics that you just mentioned from his season last year. You go beyond that. You look at 2023. he was number 2 in EPA, number 2 in success rate. You look beyond that number, 2022, he was number 2 in EPA, number 5 in success rate. He's the only quarterback in the NFL who's ranked top 5 in both EPA and success rate each of the last 3 years. The only quarterback in the entirety of the NFL. He also is there's only 3 other quarterbacks who have a winning record in each of their in each of the last 5 years that they've been starting for the team. Tua, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen. Those are the only 4 quarterbacks who in each of their starts over the last 5 years, break up year by year, have led their teams to winning records every single time that they step out on the field from a win-loss perspective. So, I just don't think that people are appreciating, I think that's the word to use, Tua enough for what he does for this offense. Not just the fact that he is borderline irreplaceable because of the uniqueness of how he's playing this position and how it must be played behind the offensive line, as we discussed before, but not just that, it's the performance that he's delivering in that unique situation that's at the top of the league for any quarterback in any situation. Some of these quarterbacks are playing behind elite offensive lines. Some of these quarterbacks have elite run games. Some of these quarterbacks have healthy offensive lines. And yet Tua is still outproducing the vast majority of them. And we're just, brushing it aside and for a litany of reasons. Everybody has their own reason as to why they don't think that Tua is that guy. Now, part of the issue is he's not a prototypical quarterback from a size perspective. He's left-handed. So there's like a lot of these other factors that hardcore, scouting guys had question marks about Tua even entering, the draft and entering the NFL. And so they might not be buying into him for one reason or another. But I think, the way that I perceive things sitting here entering the 2025 NFL season, to me, I just want to look at what statistically he's delivering to this team and how he ranks with how he improves the offense and how he ranks league wide. And in either of those metrics, this is a top 5 offense with him out there. And especially from a passing perspective, I just don't think enough people appreciate that, understand that, recognize that. And that's unfortunate, for Tua and for the trajectory of his career. He has to stay healthy. But I think what would make everything go away, Marissa, is if they just win playoff games, right? Like that's the cure that ails everything. That's the balm that you can rub on and just like helps heal everything. People are very negative about Tua, but if they just won games in the playoffs, all of this goes away. And part of their issue is they lose games late in the season, especially on the road. I put in the book, the record in road games is terrible from December onward since 2017. So not all of this is Tua. They're 5-15 in road games from December onward. 5 wins, 15 losses, but at home they're 16-6. So they're a capable football team. Like it's not as if they're a terrible team. They're winning games at a ridiculously high rate, 73% win rate at home. You go on the road, they're winning games at a 25% rate. Part of that's coaching, part of that's mentality. They've got to fix that, but it's not going to get better for the way that people are perceiving Tua if they're losing games late in the season and they're falling out of playoff contention as a result of it, or they're not winning games in the postseason. They just got to improve.
Yeah, 25 years without a playoff win is a long time if you're a fan. So that would cure a little bit of the ails that we have going on. And that's great. Can't wait to clip that segment and share that with everybody who has their opinions on Tua. So I know you're a busy guy and I have a couple more questions, but I'm going to pivot in case we don't get to all of them. So just to talk about the defense quickly, the story of the 2025 Dolphins do you think it's going to come down to their secondary? Yes, they swapped out Jalen Ramsey for Minkah Fitzpatrick, but the rest of that Dolphins secondary leaves a lot to be desired. It's one of the things people keep talking about. Do you think if that secondary comes ranked in the bottom 5 of the league this year, do you think it's even possible for Miami to make the playoffs?
Well, I think it's possible simply because you look around that division. I think the Jets are going to be actually about the same. I think they're going to have more competent coaching there, but I don't really have a lot of faith in Justin Fields. And then you look at the New England Patriots, their coaching has improved. Drake May should improve his second year, but I still don't envision the New England Patriots being a 10-plus win team. And so that division is open for that second place team to come in there and potentially win enough games to slip into the 7th spot or the 6th spot in the I don't think that you're passing the Buffalo Bills, unfortunately, this season, but I do think that there's capability of you making the playoffs. But the secondary, we rank all units for all 32 teams, and we have your secondary ranked looking into the season 27th in the league. So you mentioned bottom 5, basically a bottom 5 secondary is what we're expecting out of them. And the trouble is, last year you guys struggled, obviously, in the secondary. You went up against the 5th easiest schedule of opposing passing offenses. This year, we are anticipating by my metrics that you're going to face the 18th toughest schedule. So your schedule of opposing passing offenses is going to increase, still around league average, nothing crazy difficult, but much more difficult than what it was last season. You're going to be going up against better quarterbacks, more seasoned quarterbacks. So it's not going to be easy. But the key to me for your defense, you absolutely have to figure out a better way to get after the quarterback. I think there are some things to like up front on the defensive line. You can help your secondary a lot if you're able to get pressure on opponents. You can also help your secondary a lot if you're able to play from positions of power, building those leads to force opposing offenses to be more predictable in the second half of games where they're not able to run or pass and you have to play both, where they are in a 1st and 10 situation, and most 1st and 10s are going to be run plays, but because that team is losing and they need to come back and it's the end of the 3rd quarter, start of the 4th quarter, they're most likely passing the ball on a 1st and 10. Now your defense knows what's coming, and now your defense can prepare a little bit better. So I think the offense, like anytime you've got a weak link on the defense, to me, you can only do so much with personnel, and defense is very reactionary. What offenses you're going up against, what quarterbacks are you going up against? We'll try our best to figure out something to slow these guys down, but there's only so much you can do if your defense isn't great in terms of personnel. The offense, though, that's where complementary football comes into play. The offense can pick up a lot of that slack, and they will need to do that in 2025.
Absolutely. And I have one last question for you, and we will get you out of here. I know you're a busy guy after dropping this book. So let's talk about that offense real quickly one last time. Miami's running backs were next to last in broken tackles per rush. And while Achane brings a lot to the table, his lack of size kind of hurts him in this area. Are any of the guys behind him, do you believe, going to help Miami in this area of breaking tackles, whether it be Jalen Wright, Ollie Gordon, or, newly picked up Alexander Madison?
I don't like Alexander Madison so much, but the other guys you mentioned, I'm optimistic. We actually have ranked your running back room 5th best in the NFL entering the season. So we still have confidence in Achane, but the issue for me is so we have there's a metric. It's not ours. It's the NFL. It's based upon player tracking data called rushing yards over expected. And it basically looks at what's being blocked up for you and how are you performing versus what's being blocked up. And your offensive line obviously last year struggled massively. And as a result, the openings weren't there for the running backs to really get going. And so it was going to be more difficult. But that's where rushing yards over expected comes into play because it's accounting for some of those things. Achane in 2023, he ranked number 1 in the NFL by a mile in terms of rushing yards over expected. I think he had plus 2.9 rushing yards over expected. What that means is if the average run is 4.2 yards, Achane was gaining 7.1 yards, which would have been obviously ridiculous rate to average 7.1 yards per carry. But that's what he was delivering, plus 2.9 rushing yards over expected. Last year, though, that fell from 2.9 to negative 0.5, meaning that if the average run is 4.2 yards and that's what's being blocked up, he was recording 3.7 yards per carry. So these rushing yards, that rushing yards over expected fell off massively, and it does account for the offensive line. So he played much worse as that bell cow role. He did not play nearly as well as they need him to play because they still need him to be that bell cow running back for the Miami Dolphins. Some of these other guys, though, can help pick up the slack, and I do have confidence in their number 2 and their number 3 running backs. I think although Alexander Madison has the experience, I just don't see him having the burst or the upside. I think some of these younger guys will be getting their opportunities. I think Mike McDaniel will be real quick to rotate them in. And I think that they will be as productive as possible given the issues that you're dealing with that offensive line. So I'm optimistic. I mean, I think from a skill position perspective, your receivers, top 10 group, your running back, top 5 group, your quarterback, our publication ranks him right around league average. That's not my personal ranking. I personally think that Tua is obviously much better than that. You factor all that together, you're being held back by your offensive line play and offensive line play alone offensively. And that offense, unfortunately, given the state of your defense, is going to need to carry the bulk of your team's overall production and deliver more on offense than some teams do, because you can't rely as much on the defense. But the running back position is one position that I do have a lot of confidence in for the Miami Dolphins this year.
Well, as Chris Greer said a couple years ago, we as fans are more concerned about the O-line than he is. So this has been truly wonderful. I thank you so much for your time, Warren. Again, Warren Sharp, published author, esteemed NFL analyst. You can find him at Sharp Football. And Warren, one last time, would you like to tell the viewers out there how they can find your book?
Yeah, if you want to get all these stats and information nuggets for the Miami Dolphins and 31 other teams, go to sharp.football. It'll direct you to the page that you can get the book. If you enter the code TALK for just $1, regularly $30, just $1, head over there if you're interested. It's not going to last forever, but just want to give you guys the opportunity to spend your summer reading some really great NFL insight and getting prepared for the season, because I can't believe, Marissa, training camp's open. For some teams are reporting in just 2 days. The preseason games begin this month. Obviously, camp's open for everyone else this month as well. The season's going to be here before you know it. So it's a fun time to be covering the NFL as you're experiencing as well, because everything's ramping up right now, and I'm really looking forward to the season getting here.
We are as well, and I'll be taking my copy to the pool this weekend and reading it poolside so I could study up for the season. So thank you again so much for everybody out there in Dolphins Talk Nation. We appreciate you watching, and fins up.
Hey everyone, Mike here from DolphinsTalk.com, and thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to take a second to smash the like button here on this video, and also to ensure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. We thank you so much for listening, and we know there are a lot of podcast options out there these days regarding the Miami Dolphins and with non-Miami Dolphins podcasts. So we do appreciate you giving us a few minutes each and every day to tune in and listen to all of our shows. Everyone here on staff, thanks you so much. And if you enjoy these shows, also please be sure to sign up for Dolphins Talk Extra, our Patreon service, at patreon.com/Dolphins Talk, where we have bonus podcasts about the Dolphins and some shows not about the Miami Dolphins. We have a private message board. We also have a ton of contests where we give away really cool prizes, and it's all for the low cost of $3 a month. Again, that's patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. And also please be sure to follow the written content we have up on our website. So check out the website, DolphinsTalk.com, each and every day. Once again, thank you again for listening. Take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.